The town of Bitter Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1875, had no mercy for those it deemed unworthy. Clara Whitmore knew this better than most as she stood outside the general store, her worn leather satchel clutched against her generous frame, watching Mrs. Henderson deliberately turn away from her extended hand. The gold wedding band, the last remnant of her brief marriage to a man who died of cholera 3 months after their vows, gleamed mockingly in her palm. "I just need some flour and beans, ma'am," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This ring is real gold. It's worth—" "I know what you are," Mrs. Henderson interrupted, her thin lips pressed into a cruel line. "A burden on decent society. Your kind always wants something for nothing." She glanced pointedly at Clara's soft, rounded figure straining against her faded calico dress. "Maybe if you'd eaten less, your husband's money would have lasted longer." Clara's cheeks burned, but hunger had stripped away most of her pride weeks ago. She tried everything, sewing, washing, cooking, but no one in Bitter Creek wanted a plump widow with no family and questionable prospects. The whispers followed her everywhere. Too soft for real work. Probably ate through her husband's savings. No wonder she's alone. As Clara turned to leave, her vision blurring with tears and exhaustion, she collided with something solid. Strong hands caught her shoulders, steadying her before she fell. She looked up into a face carved by wind and sun, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes the color of storm clouds. A long scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, giving him a dangerous edge that made her breath catch. "Easy now," he said, his voice rough like gravel but surprisingly gentle. He was tall, broad-shouldered beneath a worn leather vest, with dark hair touching his collar. Clara guessed he was in his early 30s, and everything about him spoke of strength, from the way he stood to the calloused hands that had caught her with such care. "I'm sorry, I didn't," Clara stammered, trying to step back, but her legs chose that moment to buckle. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. The man caught her again, this time supporting her full weight without strain. "When's the last time you ate?" he asked, those gray eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. Before we continue with Clara and this mysterious rancher's story, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means the world to us and motivates us to keep bringing you quality content like this. Your support helps us share more stories from the Wild West. "Yesterday morning," Clara lied. It had actually been longer, but admitting the full truth felt like admitting defeat. The stranger's jaw tightened. He glanced at the gold ring still clutched in her hand, then at Mrs. Henderson watching from the store window with obvious disapproval. Something shifted in his expression. A decision made. "Gold isn't what we need here," he said quietly, pressing her hand closed around the ring. "You are." Clara blinked, certain she'd misheard. "What?" "Name's Jacob Brennan. I have a ranch about 5 miles north of here, the Broken Arrow. My cook left last month to care for her sister, and I've been managing alone. I can offer you room, board, and fair wages if you can cook and keep house." He paused, then added with surprising gentleness, "No strings, just honest work." I can cook," Clara managed, her mind reeling. "And clean. I'm a hard worker, Mr. Brennan, I promise. It's just that no one here wants—" "I don't care what this town wants." Jacob cut her off, but there was no harshness in his tone. "I care about whether you can make a decent biscuit, and don't mind living on a ranch with just horses and cattle for company most days." He studied her for another moment. "Can you ride?" Clara shook her head, embarrassment flooding through her. Another skill she lacked. "I'll teach you," Jacob said simply. "A woman on a ranch needs to know how to handle a horse. Might save your life someday." He gestured toward a large bay gelding tied to the hitching post. "That's Thunder. He's gentle, despite the name. Let's get you some supplies and head out before dark. You can start tomorrow, but tonight you eat." Within 20 minutes, Jacob had purchased more food than Clara had seen in weeks. Flour, beans, salt pork, coffee, dried apples, and even a tin of peaches. Mrs. Henderson's sour expression grew more pronounced with each item he added to the order, especially when he paid in cash without flinching at the total. "You're making a mistake, Mr. Brennan," the shopkeeper said as she wrapped the goods. "That woman is—" "Working for me now," Jacob interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd treat my employees with respect when they come to town for supplies." The steel beneath his quiet words made Mrs. Henderson snap her mouth shut. The ride to the Broken Arrow was unlike anything Clara had experienced. She sat in front of Jacob on Thunder, acutely aware of the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the strong arm wrapped around her waist to keep her secure. He smelled of leather, sage, and something clean. Soap, maybe, or just the wide-open spaces he inhabited. "You're tensing up," Jacob observed, as Thunder navigated a rocky stretch. "Trust the horse. He knows what he's doing." "I'm not used to being this high up," Clara admitted, her hands gripping the saddle horn until her knuckles turned white. "Look at the horizon, not down," Jacob instructed. "See that line where the prairie meets the sky? Focus on that. Your body will follow where your eyes lead." Clara did as he suggested, and gradually felt herself relaxing into the rhythm of Thunder's gait. The Wyoming landscape spread before them in shades of gold and amber as the sun began its descent. Endless grassland dotted with sage, distant mountains purple against the sky, and a sense of space so vast it made her chest ache with unexpected longing. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Jacob agreed. But when Clara glanced back, she found him looking at her profile rather than the landscape. He quickly shifted his gaze forward. "Hard country, though. Takes strength to survive out here." "I may not look it," Clara said, old defensiveness creeping into her voice, "but I'm stronger than people think." "I can see that," Jacob replied, and something in his tone made Clara think he wasn't just being polite. The Broken Arrow ranch house came into view as twilight painted the sky in streaks of pink and orange. A sturdy two-story structure of weathered wood with a wide porch, surrounded by a barn, corral, and several outbuildings. It looked solid, lived in, and desperately in need of a woman's touch. Laundry hung forgotten on a line. Dishes were stacked on the porch, and Clara could see through the open door that the interior was in similar condition. "I know it's a mess," Jacob said, sounding almost apologetic as he dismounted and then lifted Clara down with easy strength. His hands spanned her waist, and for a moment they stood close enough that Clara could count the silver flecks in his gray eyes. "I've been focused on keeping the ranch running. Haven't had much time for domestic concerns." "It's fine," Clara assured him, stepping back before her thundering heartbeat betrayed how his touch affected her. "I've dealt with worse." Jacob's expression darkened slightly. "Your husband, he wasn't good to you, was he?" The perceptiveness of the question startled Clara. "How did you—" "The way you flinch when someone moves too fast. The way you apologize for things that aren't your fault." Jacob picked up the supply sacks with one hand and gestured toward the house with the other. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But here, on my land, No one will hurt you. That's a promise." Something in Clara's chest cracked open at those words. She'd been alone for so long, fighting for every scrap of dignity, that the simple offer of safety felt almost foreign. "Why are you being kind to me?" she asked, needing to understand. "You don't know anything about me." Jacob was quiet for a moment, studying her in the fading light. "I know you're hungry and desperate, but still trying to stand tall. I know you offered something precious for basic necessities, which means you value survival over sentimentality. And I know this town judged you for superficial reasons, which tells me they're fools." He met her eyes directly. "I've learned to trust my instincts about people, Clara, and my instincts say you're exactly what this place needs." That night, after Clara had prepared a simple meal of fried salt pork, biscuits, and beans, Jacob proclaimed them the best biscuits he'd eaten in months. He showed her to a small room on the second floor. It was clean but sparse. A bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a chipped basin, and a window overlooking the prairie. "It's not much," Jacob said from the doorway, "but it's private. Door has a lock if that makes you feel safer." "It's perfect," Clara said honestly. Compared to the boarding house room she'd lost weeks ago, this felt like a palace. "Mr. Brennan, I need you to understand something. I will work hard for you. I won't give you any reason to regret hiring me." "Jacob," he corrected gently, "and I don't think I'll regret it." He started to leave, then paused. "Clara, tomorrow I'll start teaching you to ride properly. Ranch life requires it, but we'll go slow. No need to rush anything out here." After he left, Clara sat on the bed and finally let herself cry, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. For the first time in months, she felt safe, and for the first time in her life, someone had looked at her not as a burden or a disappointment, but as a person with value. The first week at the Broken Arrow passed in a blur of activity. Clara threw herself into making the ranch house habitable again, scrubbing years of bachelor grime from corners, organizing the chaos of Jacob's existence, and cooking meals that gradually brought color back to both their faces. Jacob was a man of few words, but Clara learned to read his silences. The way he paused over his morning coffee, staring at the prairie as if searching for something lost. The tension that never quite left his shoulders. The occasional nightmares she heard through the walls. Muffled shouts that spoke of battles she couldn't imagine. "You were a soldier," she said one morning, setting his breakfast plate down. It wasn't a question. Jacob's hands stilled on his coffee cup. "Cavalry. Served 6 years before I came here and tried to forget." Does it work? The forgetting? "No," Jacob admitted, "but the land helps. There's something about working with your hands, building something instead of destroying it, that makes the memories bearable." He looked up at her. "What are you trying to forget, Clara?" She should have deflected, changed the subject, but something about Jacob's steady gaze made honesty easier than lies. "A husband who saw me as property he could do with as he pleased. Parents who sold me to him because they were ashamed of a daughter who didn't fit their idea of proper." Clara's hands twisted in her apron. "I spent my whole life being told I was too much, too big, too hungry, too difficult. Thomas said he'd take care of me, but what he meant was he'd break me down until I fit into the smallest space possible." "And when he died?" Jacob asked quietly. "I felt guilty for being relieved." Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. "What kind of person does that make me?" Jacob stood and crossed to where she stood by the stove. He didn't touch her, but his presence was a solid comfort. "The kind who survived. There's no shame in that, Clara." A man who treats a woman as anything less than a full person doesn't deserve grief. He deserves to be forgotten. Clara looked up, finding unexpected understanding in Jacob's scarred face. You sound like you're speaking from experience. My mother, Jacob said after a pause. My father was a hard man, broke her spirit long before she died. I was 14 when I left home, joined the army as soon as I could lie about my age. Told myself I'd never be like him. He finally met her eyes. Told myself I'd never marry at all, rather than risk becoming that kind of man. The admission hung between them, heavy with meaning. Clara felt the shift in the air, the recognition of two wounded souls finding unexpected kinship. You're nothing like him, Clara said with certainty. Everything about the way you treat people, animals, this land, it speaks to who you really are. And that person is good, Jacob. Fundamentally good. Jacob's gray eyes darkened with emotion. For a moment, Clara thought he might reach for her, but instead he stepped back. I should get to work. Fence needs mending in the north pasture. His voice was rougher than usual. But Clara, thank you. Their riding lessons began that afternoon. Jacob saddled a gentle mare named Daisy, explaining each piece of tack and its purpose. Clara appreciated his patience, the way he never made her feel foolish for not knowing things that seemed second nature to him. Here, Jacob said, demonstrating how to grip the reins. Not too tight. You're guiding her, not controlling her. There's a difference. He positioned Clara's hands correctly, his calloused fingers warm against hers. Feel that? You're communicating with her, not commanding. Clara tried to focus on Daisy, rather than the electricity shooting through her skin wherever Jacob touched her. What if she doesn't listen? She will. Horses sense fear and confidence, both. Right now, you're broadcasting uncertainty like a telegraph. Jacob moved to stand beside the mare's shoulder. Take a breath. Settle yourself. Remember, you're not asking her to do anything she doesn't already know how to do. You're just partners sharing the journey. Over the next hour, Jacob taught Clara to mount, sit properly, and guide Daisy in slow circles around the corral. His instructions were clear and encouraging, his hands steadying her when she wavered. By the end, Clara was breathless from exertion and exhilaration. You're a natural, Jacob said, and the pride in his voice made Clara's heart skip. Another few weeks and you'll be riding well enough to check the south boundary with me. Really? Clara couldn't hide her pleasure. The idea of being truly useful on the ranch, of proving her worth beyond cooking and cleaning, meant more than she could articulate. Really? Jacob confirmed. He helped her dismount, his hands once again spanning her waist. This time, neither of them stepped back immediately. You're stronger than you think, Clara. I see it every day. The way you tackle every task without complaint. The way you face each new challenge. You're not the woman this town tried to convince you that you were. Who am I then? Clara asked, surprised by her own boldness. Jacob's thumb traced a small circle on her waist, probably unconsciously. You're a woman worth knowing. Worth, he trailed off, seeming to catch himself. His hands dropped away. We should head back. Storm's coming. Clara noticed the dark clouds gathering on the horizon and nodded, but she couldn't shake the incomplete sentence. Worth what? Worth saving? Worth caring for? Worth loving? The storm broke just after sunset, violent and sudden as prairie weather often was. Rain hammered the roof, while lightning turned the world outside into a flash-lit nightmare of shadows and brilliance. Clara had never liked storms. They reminded her of Thomas's rages, the the way he'd use thunder to mask the sound of breaking dishes and breaking spirits. She was trying to steady her breathing in the kitchen when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Jacob appeared, hair damp from checking the barn, concern etched across his features. "You all right?" he asked, taking in her white-knuckled grip on the table edge. "Fine," Clara lied, then jumped as thunder cracked overhead. Jacob crossed the room in 3 strides. "You're not fine. Talk to me." "It's stupid," Clara said, embarrassment heating her cheeks. "I'm a grown woman afraid of storms." "Not stupid," Jacob said firmly. "Fear is fear. Usually has good reasons behind it." He pulled out a chair and sat, creating a physical barrier between Clara and the stormlit windows. "Tell me about it." Maybe it was the gentleness in his voice. Or maybe it was simply that Clara was tired of carrying the weight alone, but the words tumbled out. She told him about Thomas's escalating violence, always carefully hidden beneath respectability, about nights when storms masked the sounds of his anger, about learning to make herself small and silent, hoping to avoid notice. "He never hit my face," Clara heard herself say. Always careful about that. Needed to maintain appearances, you see. The perfect couple, the proper marriage. She laughed bitterly. When he died, everyone mourned the loss of such a devoted husband. If they only knew. Jacob's hands had curled into fists on the table. "If he wasn't already dead," he said, voice low and dangerous, "I'd kill him myself for what he did to you." The vehemence shocked Clara. "Jacob, no man has the right to hurt a woman, Clara. Not ever. Not for any reason." Jacob's gray eyes blazed with conviction. What he did wasn't love. It wasn't even close. It was cruelty dressed up in matrimonial clothing. Another crack of thunder, and Clara flinched, despite herself. Jacob immediately shifted, moving his chair closer until his knee touched hers, a solid anchor point in the chaos. "Focus on me," he instructed. "Not the storm, just me." When Clara met his eyes, he continued, "Tell me something good, a memory that has nothing to do with him." Clara thought for a moment. "When I was little, maybe 7 or 8, my grandmother taught me to make apple butter. We spent a whole day in her kitchen, just the 2 of us, stirring the pot and talking. She told me stories about her youth, about the man she loved before she married my grandfather. She said," Clara paused, the memory suddenly precious. "She said that a woman's worth wasn't measured by her waist size or her obedience, but by the strength of her heart and the sharpness of her mind." "Smart woman," Jacob said softly. "And she was right. Everything about you proves it." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and gently took Clara's hand. His thumb traced patterns across her knuckles. "You're safe here, Clara. The storm can't hurt you, and anyone who tries to hurt you will have to go through me first." They sat like that as the storm raged outside, hands clasped, eyes locked. Clara felt something shift inside her chest, a wall crumbling, a defense mechanism no longer needed. This man, this quiet rancher with his scarred face and gentle hands, saw her, really saw her, not as too much or too little, but as exactly enough. "Jacob," she whispered, "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Trust, feel safe, want." She couldn't finish the sentence, but the way Jacob's eyes darkened told her he understood. "We'll figure it out," he promised. "Together. No rush, no pressure. Just together." The word wrapped around Clara like a blanket. Together. Not alone anymore. The storm passed, but something between them had irreversibly changed. The next few weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm that felt dangerously close to domestic bliss. Clara woke before dawn to make coffee and watch the sunrise paint the prairie in shades of rose and gold. Jacob would emerge from his room, hair rumpled, and they'd share quiet conversation over breakfast before he headed out to work the ranch. Clara's writing improved dramatically. Jacob was a patient teacher, and she proved an eager student. He taught her to handle a rifle, too, setting up targets behind the barn. "A woman alone out here needs to know how to defend herself," Jacob explained, positioning the rifle stock against her shoulder. "Don't be afraid of the kick. Lean into it." He stood behind her, arms bracketing hers to help her aim. "Breathe steady. Squeeze the trigger. Don't pull it." The rifle cracked, and Clara's shot hit the edge of the target. "Good," Jacob said, his breath warm against her ear. Again. By the fifth shot, Clara was hitting the center with increasing regularity. The feeling of competence was intoxicating. She was becoming someone who could survive in this harsh land, someone who didn't need constant protection. "Proud of you," Jacob said when they finished. The simple words meant more than any elaborate praise. One afternoon, while Jacob was in town getting supplies, Clara decided to tackle his bedroom. She'd been avoiding it, recognizing it as his private space, but the door had been left open, and she could see the dust accumulating. The room was surprisingly spare. A large bed with a simple frame, a wardrobe, a desk covered in ranch ledgers and correspondence. But what caught Clara's attention was the small portrait on the nightstand. A young woman with dark hair and a serious expression, beautiful in an austere way. Her name was Elizabeth. Jacob's voice from the doorway made Clara jump. She hadn't heard him return. I was supposed to marry her, before the war." Clara carefully set the portrait back down. "What happened?" Jacob entered the room, moving to stand beside her. "I came home after my first tour. She'd waited, written me letters every week, talked about the future we'd built. But I wasn't the same man who'd left." His jaw tightened. "The things I'd seen, done, they changed me, made me hard, angry. I'd wake up swinging from nightmares, couldn't stand to be in crowds, jumped at loud noises." "What did she do?" Clara asked quietly. "She tried. For 6 months, she tried to reach the man she'd known. But I was too far gone in my own darkness." Jacob picked up the portrait, studying it with distant sadness. "I ended it. Told her she deserved better than a broken soldier who'd probably drink himself to death or eat a bullet before 30. But you didn't," Clara pointed out. "You built this ranch, made a life." "Took years. I came out here with nothing but army pay and demons. Nearly did drink myself to death that first winter." Jacob set the portrait down and turned to face Clara fully. "But something about this land, the work, the silence, it started to heal me. Slowly, I learned I could live with the memories if I had a purpose beyond them." "Why do you keep her picture?" The question was perhaps too personal, but Clara needed to know. "Reminder," Jacob said simply, "of what I couldn't be then, of why I swore I'd never let myself care for someone again. Couldn't trust myself not to hurt them with my brokenness." His gray eyes met Clara's with painful honesty. "I've kept that promise for 12 years. The unspoken implication hung between them, until now." "Jacob," Clara said carefully, "whatever you were then, you're not that man anymore. The person I see treats everything around him with respect and care. We're patient when you could be harsh, gentle when strength would be easier. That's not brokenness. That's someone who fought his demons and won. Did I win? Jacob asked, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Or did I just learn to hide them better? Clara reached out and placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. You won, she said with conviction. You're not hiding here, Jacob. You're living. And you helped me start living again, too. Jacob's hand came up to cover hers, pressing it more firmly against his chest. Clara, I need you to understand something. What I feel for you, it scares me. I swore I wouldn't let anyone close, wouldn't risk becoming the kind of man who could hurt someone the way my father hurt my mother. You're not him, Clara insisted. And what I feel for you scares me too. Thomas taught me that marriage was a cage, that caring for someone meant giving them power to destroy you. She took a shaky breath. But with you, it feels different. You make me feel strong, not weak, capable, not helpless. You are strong, Jacob said fiercely. Strongest woman I've ever known. You survived hell and came out fighting. His free hand came up to cup her face with infinite gentleness. You're not property, Clara. You're not anyone's burden. You're a person worth... He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. Worth what? Clara whispered, echoing her question from weeks ago. Worth everything, Jacob finished. Worth saving, worth knowing, worth... His thumb traced her cheekbone. Worth loving, if you'll let someone try. Clara's breath caught Jacob. Whatever she was going to say was interrupted by the sound of riders approaching fast. Jacob immediately shifted, moving to the window with the instinct of a soldier. His entire body went rigid. What is it? Clara asked, fear spiking through her. Trouble, Jacob said grimly. 5 riders, armed. He turned to her. Get the rifle from the parlor. Load it like I taught you, and stay upstairs. Don't come down no matter what you hear. I'm not hiding while you... Clara. Jacob gripped her shoulders. I need to know you're safe. Please, I can't fight if I'm worried about you. The riders were close now. Clara could hear shouting, crude and threatening. Brennan, we know you're in there. Send out the whore and we'll leave you in peace. Clara's blood turned to ice. She recognized that voice. Thomas's brother, Marcus Whitmore. And he'd brought friends. Jacob's eyes darkened with understanding and fury. They're here for you. They'll hurt you, Clara said, panic rising. Jacob, they'll... No one is taking you from this ranch, Jacob said with absolute conviction. Now go, upstairs, please. Clara wanted to argue, but the sound of men dismounting outside spurred her to action. She grabbed the rifle and fled upstairs, positioning herself at the window where she could see the front yard. Jacob emerged onto the porch, rifle held loosely at his side, but ready. This is private property. State your business or leave. Marcus Whitmore swaggered forward, a heavy-set man with his late brother's mean eyes. We're here for Thomas's widow. She's got debts to pay. Took money and goods that weren't hers when she left. That's a lie, Jacob said flatly. And even if it wasn't, Clara works for me now. Any debts are settled through me. She ain't yours to protect, Brennan, another man called out. Clara recognized him as one of the men who'd propositioned her in town, offering to take care of her in exchange for favors. She's a whore who needs to learn her place. The only people who need to learn something here are you, Jacob said, his voice deadly quiet. You're gonna get back on your horses and leave, now. Or what? Marcus sneered. You gonna take on all 5 of us? You may be some fancy ex-soldier, but you're still just one man. One man is enough when he's defending his home, Jacob replied. And Clara isn't just an employee. She's under my protection. That means anyone who tries to hurt her answers to me. From her vantage point upstairs, Clara saw one of the men trying to circle around the side of the house. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she raised the rifle, sighting down the barrel the way Jacob had taught her. "I see you, Caleb," she called out, her voice surprisingly steady. "Take another step, and I'll put a bullet through your leg." The man froze, looking up at the window where Clara stood. "You don't have the guts." Clara fired, the bullet kicking up dirt inches from his boot. Next one won't be a warning. Jacob's lips twitched with what might have been pride, but his eyes never left Marcus. "Seems like you're outgunned, gentlemen. My employee is a surprisingly good shot." Marcus's face reddened with rage. "That bitch belongs to the Whitmore family. Thomas paid good money for her, and she's got obligations. A woman isn't property you can buy and sell," Jacob interrupted, cold fury edging into his voice. "And Clara has no obligations to you or anyone else except herself." He raised his rifle, sighting directly at Marcus's chest. "Here's how this is going to go. You're going to apologize to the lady for your disrespectful language. Then you're going to mount up and ride out. If I ever see you on my land again, I won't bother with warnings." "You can't." The crack of Jacob's rifle cut off Marcus's protest. The bullet passed close enough to his ear that he stumbled backward with a yelp. Jacob had already rechambered another round. "That was my warning," Jacob said. "I don't miss twice." For a long moment, the tension stretched taut enough to snap. Clara kept her rifle trained on Caleb, her finger resting lightly on the trigger, prepared to fire if needed. She wasn't the helpless woman these men thought she was. Not anymore. Finally, Marcus spat on the ground. "This isn't over, Brennan." "Yes, it is," Jacob replied. "Touch Clara, threaten her, even look at her wrong when you see her in town, and I'll hunt you down myself. That's a promise, not a threat. Now get off my land." The men mounted up with muttered curses and threats, but they rode out. Clara watched until they disappeared over the rise, then lowered the rifle with shaking hands. The adrenaline that had kept her steady drained away, leaving her legs weak. Jacob was up the stairs and at her side within seconds, taking the rifle from her trembling hands and setting it aside. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm fine," Clara managed. "Jacob, I'm so sorry. I brought this to your door. I should have warned you that Thomas's family might—" "Stop," Jacob said, gripping her upper arms gently. "This isn't your fault. None of it. Those men are cowards who prey on women they think are vulnerable." His eyes searched her face. "You were magnificent down there. Standing up, taking that shot, you weren't afraid." "I was terrified," Clara admitted, "but I was more afraid of them hurting you." She looked up at him, seeing the concern and something deeper in his gray eyes. "Jacob, when I thought they might shoot you," she couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Jacob pulled her into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. Clara could feel his heart pounding as fast as her own. "I know," he murmured into her hair. "When I heard you at that window putting yourself at risk, Clara, if something had happened to you—" "But it didn't," Clara said, pulling back enough to see his face. "We're both safe. Together." That word again. Together. It seemed to encompass everything they couldn't quite say. Jacob's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I'm falling in love with you," he said quietly. "I fought it, told myself it was just responsibility, just kindness to someone in need. But that's a lie. You've gotten under my skin, Clara Whitmore. Into my heart. Clara's breath caught. Jacob, You don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I know you're still healing from what Thomas did. I know trust doesn't come easy. I needed you to know. In case something had gone wrong today, I needed you to know that you're important to me. More than important. He smiled, sad and hopeful at once. You're my salvation, Clara. This ranch was just land and work before you came. Now it's home. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks, but for once they weren't born of pain or fear. You gave me back my life, she said. You saw me when everyone else looked through me. You made me feel worthy when I thought I'd never be enough. She placed her hand over his heart again, feeling its steady rhythm. I love you too, Jacob. I think I have for weeks, but I was too afraid to admit it. The kiss, when it came, was gentle, a question rather than a demand. Jacob's lips brushed against Clara's with reverent care, as if she were something precious that might break. Clara leaned into him, letting herself feel safe and wanted in equal measure. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Jacob rested his forehead against hers. I need to say this clearly, so there's no misunderstanding. I want you to stay, Clara. Not as an employee, as my partner, my equal. He took a shaky breath. As my wife, if you'll have me. Jacob, I know it's fast, he continued, and I know marriage probably sounds like a nightmare after Thomas. But I promise you, Clara, I'll spend every day proving that it doesn't have to be what he made it. We'll be partners in every sense. Your voice will carry as much weight as mine. Your dreams will matter as much as my plans. His hands framed her face. I'll never raise my hand to you. I'll never make you feel small. I'll never. Clara kissed him, stopping the flow of promises. When she pulled back, she was smiling through her tears. Yes, she said simply. Yes, Jacob, I'll marry you. The joy that transformed Jacob's face was worth every hardship Clara had endured to get to this moment. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle before setting her down and kissing her again, deeper this time, with a passion that had been carefully restrained until now. I'll build you a bigger house, Jacob said between kisses. Add rooms, whatever you want. I don't need a bigger house, Clara laughed. I just need you. You have me, Jacob promised, for as long as you'll keep me. They were married a week later, in a simple ceremony at the ranch. The preacher from Bitter Creek performed the service with obvious reluctance. The rumors about Clara and Jacob had run rampant through town, but neither of them cared what the gossiping townspeople thought. Jacob's nearest neighbor, a widow named Sarah Mitchell, who ran her own ranch 5 miles south, served as witness. She was a weathered woman in her 50s who'd buried 3 husbands and raised 6 children on the Wyoming frontier. About time you found someone, Sarah told Jacob after the ceremony. She turned to Clara with a knowing look. He's been alone too long, this one. Needed someone to remind him what living is supposed to feel like. She does that, Jacob said, his hand finding Clara's. Every day. That night, in the bedroom they now shared, Jacob proved with infinite patience and care that marriage could be everything Thomas's version had failed to be. He moved slowly, checking in constantly, making sure Clara felt safe and wanted rather than used. When she tensed at old memories, he stopped immediately. We don't have to, he said, brushing hair back from her face. There's no rush, no requirements. Just us, figuring this out together. I want to, Clara assured him. I trust you, Jacob. Completely. She pulled him down for a kiss. Show me what it's supposed to be like. I'll go slow, Jacob promised. It might hurt at first. I'll die before I hurt you, Jacob interrupted fiercely. If anything doesn't feel right, you tell me, immediately. Promise me, Clara. I promise, she said, touched by the vehemence in his voice. And true to his word, Jacob was gentle and patient, turning what Clara had learned to endure into something beautiful and connecting. He made sure she found pleasure first, repeatedly, before seeking his own. And afterward, he held her close, whispering promises against her hair about the future they'd build together. Thank you, Clara murmured, drowsy and content. For what? For making me feel safe. For loving me exactly as I am. Jacob pressed a kiss to her forehead. Thank you for giving me a reason to believe in happy endings again. The next months passed in a blur of happiness Clara had never imagined possible. She threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm, learning everything Jacob could teach her. She rode fence lines with him, helped birth foals, and even assisted with the cattle roundup, proving herself capable despite the other ranchers' skepticism. In October, she discovered she was pregnant. The joy on Jacob's face when she told him made her cry. A baby, he kept repeating, wonderstruck. Clara, we're going to have a baby. Are you happy? She asked, suddenly nervous. I know we haven't been married long. And happy doesn't begin to cover it, Jacob said, pulling her into his arms. You've given me everything I thought I'd lost the right to have. Love, home, family. He knelt, pressing a kiss to her still flat belly. Our child will grow up knowing they're wanted and loved, knowing they're enough exactly as they are. Clara ran her fingers through his dark hair, overcome with emotion. What if I'm not a good mother? What if you'll be wonderful? Jacob said with absolute conviction. You're strong and brave and full of love. Our child will be lucky to have you. They decided to expand the ranch house, after all, adding rooms for the coming baby and whatever siblings might follow. Jacob worked late into the evenings on the construction, determined to have it ready before winter set in. One afternoon in late November, Clara was in town buying supplies when she encountered Marcus Whitmore on the street. She tensed automatically, but Jacob was at the feed store and several townspeople were present. Marcus wouldn't dare try anything public. Mrs. Brennan, Marcus said with exaggerated politeness, tipping his hat. But his eyes were cold. I hear congratulations are in order. A baby already? Thomas barely dead a year? His implication was clear and vicious. Clara felt her face heat, but she raised her chin. My marriage to Jacob is none of your concern, Mr. Whitmore. Good day. She tried to move past him, but Marcus shifted to block her path. That baby you're carrying could be Thomas's, he said loud enough for others to hear. Could be you trapped Brennan with another man's bastard. The words cut deep, not because Clara believed them. She knew the timing made Marcus's accusation impossible, but because she could see people listening, judgment forming on their faces. The baby is Jacob's, Clara said clearly. But even if it wasn't, that wouldn't be any of your business. Now move aside. Or what? Marcus sneered. You gonna shoot me like you threatened Caleb? Everyone knows what you really are. A whore who... He never finished the sentence. Jacob's fist connected with Marcus's jaw with a crack that echoed down the street. Marcus went down hard, blood streaming from his nose. Jacob stood over him, fists clenched, fury radiating from every line of his body. You ever speak to my wife like that again, I'll do more than break your nose. That's my child she's carrying, and if you suggest otherwise one more time, you'll answer to me." Marcus scrambled backward, fear replacing his bravado. Several men had emerged from shops at the commotion, including the sheriff. "Mr. Brennan, is there a problem here?" Sheriff Davies asked, though his tone suggested he'd heard enough to guess. "Mr. Whitmore was publicly slandering my wife," Jacob said, never taking his eyes off Marcus. "Making false accusations about our child?" I responded as any husband would. "That true, Marcus?" the sheriff asked. Marcus wiped blood from his face but said nothing. "I suggest you leave Mrs. Brennan alone from now on," Sheriff Davies said, "and you might want to have the doctor look at that nose." He turned to Jacob. "Why don't you take your wife home, Mr. Brennan? I think the excitement's over." As Jacob guided Clara toward their wagon, she heard whispers following them. But this time, the tone had shifted. Mrs. Henderson, who'd refused to sell Clara food months ago, actually nodded respectfully. Others looked at Marcus with disgust, rather than at Clara with judgment. "You didn't have to hit him," Clara said once they were on the road home, though secretly she was pleased. "Yes, I did," Jacob replied flatly. "He disrespected you, implied you'd been unfaithful, questioned the legitimacy of our child." His jaw tightened. "I won't tolerate anyone treating you that way, Clara. Ever. My hero," Clara said softly, taking his hand. Jacob's expression softened. "Always," he promised. "For as long as I live, I'll stand between you and anyone who tries to hurt you." Their daughter was born in early spring, on a day when the prairie was carpeted with wildflowers. Labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Clara thought she couldn't endure. But Jacob never left her side, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, reminding her she was strong enough to do this. "One more push," the midwife, Sarah Mitchell, coached. "Come on, Clara, you can do this." And Clara did, drawing on reserves of strength she'd built over months of ranch life and Jacob's unwavering belief in her. The baby's cry filled the room, and Clara collapsed back against the pillows, exhausted and elated. "A girl," Sarah announced, placing the squalling infant on Clara's chest. "Healthy and strong, just like her mama." Clara looked down at her daughter's red, wrinkled face and felt love so fierce it took her breath away. This tiny person was hers and Jacob's, proof that good things could come from pain, that happy endings were possible. "She's perfect," Jacob breathed, kneeling beside the bed with tears streaming down his scarred face. "Clara, she's perfect." "What should we name her?" Clara asked. Jacob thought for a moment, then smiled. "Hope, because that's what you gave me when you came into my life. Hope that I could be better, be more, that I deserved happiness after all." He kissed Clara's forehead. "Hope that tomorrow could be better than yesterday." "Hope Brennan," Clara tested. "I love it. Little Hope." Brennan grew into a strong, happy child who learned to ride before she could properly walk. She had Clara's gentle heart and Jacob's gray eyes, and she was loved beyond measure by both parents. As Hope grew, so did the broken arrow. Clara's skills as a rancher became widely recognized, and other women began asking her advice on managing their own properties. Jacob built a reputation as a fair employer who treated his workers, including the occasional female ranch hand, with respect. The scars of their pasts never fully disappeared. Some nights, Jacob still woke from nightmares, and Clara was there to hold him until the memories faded. Some days, Clara still struggled with feelings of inadequacy, and Jacob was there to remind her of her worth. But together, they'd built something neither thought possible, a love that healed rather than hurt, a partnership of equals, a home filled with laughter and hope. 5 years after Clara first arrived at the Broken Arrow, desperate and starving, she stood on the porch, watching Jacob teach Hope to handle a rope while their son, Thomas, named for the brother Jacob had lost in the war, not Clara's late husband, napped inside. Sarah Mitchell rode up, dismounting with the ease of someone who'd spent more years on horseback than on foot. "Afternoon, Clara. I was in town and heard something I thought you'd want to know." "Oh?" Clara asked, offering her friend a cup of coffee. "Marcus Whitmore left the territory. Seems he got caught cheating at cards and had to run before the marshal caught up with him." Sarah's eyes twinkled. "Word is he was afraid Jacob would make good on that promise to hunt him down if he ever bothered you again." Clara laughed. "Jacob would have too." "That man of yours is one of the good ones," Sarah observed. "Doesn't happen often out here. A man who sees a woman as more than property or burden. You hold on to him." "I intend to," Clara said, watching Jacob lift Hope onto his shoulders while she squealed with delight. "For the rest of my life." That evening, after the children were asleep, Clara and Jacob sat on the porch, watching stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. Jacob's arm was around her shoulders, and she leaned into his solid warmth. "Do you ever regret it?" Jacob asked quietly. "Staying here? Marrying me? I know ranch life is hard, and—" "Never," Clara interrupted firmly. "Jacob, you saved my life, not just by offering me work, but by showing me what it means to be truly seen and valued. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose." She turned to look at him in the fading light. "You called me your salvation, but the truth is, we saved each other." Jacob kissed her, slow and sweet. "Together," he murmured against her lips. "Together," Clara agreed. "Always." The night wrapped around them, peaceful and full of promise. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called to its mate. The prairie whispered secrets to the wind. And in the ranch house Jacob had built and Clara had made into a home, 2 children slept safely, surrounded by the love their parents had fought so hard to create. Clara thought back to that desperate day in Bitter Creek when she'd offered her wedding ring for food, when Mrs. Henderson had looked at her with such contempt. That woman who'd been ready to give up everything just to survive felt like a stranger now. The woman Clara had become was stronger, braver, more certain of her place in the world. She'd learned to ride and shoot, to run a ranch and raise children, to love without fear and trust without reservation. She'd learned that she was enough, not too much, not too little, but exactly right. And she'd learned that sometimes, when you think you've reached the end, you're actually standing at a new beginning. All you need is someone to believe in you enough to help you take that first step. Jacob had been that person for her, and Clara had been that person for him. 2 broken souls finding wholeness in each other, building a life from the ashes of their pasts. As they sat under the stars, planning tomorrow and dreaming of the years to come, Clara sent up a silent prayer of thanks for second chances, for the harsh beauty of the prairie that had become home, for children who would grow up knowing love rather than fear, and most of all, for the quiet rancher who'd looked at a desperate woman and seen not a burden, but salvation. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Clara and Jacob's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.